all the way over here. I'm missing the Dutch contingent, but the British people of Healey Sprites have made a terrific effort to get here tonight. It's wonderful to see that. Great. Well, I've forgotten what I did now so many years ago. I mean, some of these pictures, you mentioned chassis numbers and engine numbers. I can never remember that. We were never told that. Donald used to say, "Get in, drive it, boy." That was it. But some of the great races I did was like the Targa Florio. You've got Jack Wheeler here and people who did those events. They were wonderful events to do. Today, motor racing is a lot safer. People think they can just drive like dodging cars, touring cars now, bounce off each other. But when you see pictures of the Targa Florio and Mugello and some of those old events in Nürburgring Ring, I think that was when I was in the best years of motor racing, really, compared with today. But it's wonderful to see we've got people here who've looked after these Healey cars and restored them, but they're better now than what they were when we drove them. And Steve Coleman, I've got to tell you about Steve. I was in Florida a few years ago, staying with a friend of mine, and a chap called Bill Hamilton, who quite well known, I think, with the Healey people, wanted to talk to me and have a little chat down in Florida. And he said, "Clive, what was the car you really liked to drive?" I said, "Well, the car I didn't drive was the last of the Healey Roadster we built for Ryan and I to drive at the Targa." He said, "I know the man who's got that. He's in Texas." And therefore, and that's how I met Steve and his wife, Melanie. And I actually ended up racing these cars in the States a couple of years ago. And it was the first time a Healey member of the Healey family had actually raced a car after Donald. And Steve said to me, "Do you know the Healey family?" I said, "Well, I know a few of them still." He said, "Do you think you could get one of them to come over to Texas?" So I said, "Well, the great-grandson Sam is quite interested in racing." And I mentioned it to him, and then I mentioned it to David, his dad. "Oh, we'll be up for that, but we've got to get a license." So we decided to take them to Silverstone. They did the race course at Silverstone with a bit of arm twisting. We got them through. They got their arms tested, went on to the States, and they actually raced. I think Steve will tell you 3 or 4 races with both the cars. So it was a wonderful experience. I think the Healey family, after Donald's time, his then grandson and great-grandson were actually racing their cars. And it was a wonderful experience to have that a couple of years ago. And since then, Sam now is racing in the current MG Midget Series with one of Peter May's cars. And a couple of years ago, Peter Healy and I were down at Perranporth and had the show there. And Vic was there, and Sam turned up with his car and put it on the parade. Vic walked down. "You better get out of that, it'll be a boy." He said, "That's not Healey." It was one of these super mod cars. He made Sam put it back of the line. I thought that was a wonderful thing that happened. But it's been great tonight, and you've done a lovely thing on this. I mean, the time you spent on it to put it together and sort it out. I can't remember, I can just remember looking at the car saying, "Well, yeah, I did drive that one." Actually, I probably drove all of them over the period of time I was with the Healey factory. And I've got to say about Brian Wheeler being here too, because the SR that he built was actually, when I drove it, it felt better than the car I drove at Le Mans. Well, I was originally intended for that. Donald was a wonderful man, and he was so looking to the future. And I really think over the last few years of the Healey factory, excuse my French, but I think he got shafted. The Healey family did with the things that were going on between British Leyland and the manufacturers with MG and looking at the market abroad. And I'm glad to see that Spridget is still living on today. I really am. I'm great to be here today because Hans has looked after us. All the staff have been brilliant. I showed them how to make false bras. But it's great to see everybody here. All these models here, I mean, I came into the opening of this, and now I see it's expanded even more and more. And I'm very interested with the Polo Club next door. They've got some wonderful staff there. Joe Cox has actually got an appointment, I think, tomorrow with one of the staff. He's taking riding lessons.
You were telling me about your time in Mazda in 1968.
Oh yeah, actually it was quite funny. We were talking earlier on today. In 1968, Rachel and I and a couple of friends ran for dinner one night, and the phone rang, and a friend of mine picked up the phone, and he said, "Clive," he said, "it's a company called Mazda." And I said, "Well, there's light bulbs, isn't it?" We were sat here, not quite a few to drink. Anyway, this Japanese guy was at the end of the phone, and he said, "It's Mr. Uno here. Am I speaking to Clive Baker?" I said, "Yes, you are." He said, "Well, we would like to make a contract with you to drive our cars at the Nürburgring, Spa and Silverstone. This is a Group 2 saloon car, which is the RX2. And I thought, that might be right. So they arranged for me to meet them in London, and I met them at the Hilton Hotel. And he said, "Look, we've seen your records at the Nürburgring, we want you to do this." Anyway, cutting to the chase, I arrived at the Nürburgring, and we got there a week before. You can pay 10 Deutsche Marks so you can drive around the track, and we can do this. So they had a track on the side, and they had an RX2 race Group 2 car, and 6 mechanics. And they said, "We want you to do 1 lap, in and out, installation lap." Came back in. And I kept looking at this truck on the side, and it's quite a big old truck. And they kept running in and out of there, coming back and fiddling around the car. And I said to the interpreter, "Well, what's this truck?" He said, "That's our onboard computer." This is in 1968. And it was the first time Bridgestone tyres got involved in racing. And they were fitted on the car. And he said, "Yes," he said, "we've got sensors on the brakes, we've got sensors on the wheel bearings, the gearbox, etc. So come and have a look." And it was an actual computer set up. Anyway, the guy said, "You will lap in whatever the time was at this stage." And I said, "Well, how do you know that?" He said, "Well, we've had a survey of the circuit 6 weeks ago. The team came over, they've gone around the Nürburgring, they sorted out the track, worked out the canvas, the gradients, and the car will be fitted in these gear ratios, this back axle, and this is what you will do your lap time." Oh, okay. Well, when you get to Spa, we've done that, and we will lap in that, and we get Silverstone and do that. Oh, really? So off I go. And the first flying lap around it, the Japanese are quite small people here tonight, in all departments. So I drove the car around, and it's the first time I used the brakes. Everything locked up, and smoke was pouring out everywhere. God, right. So I came back and I said, the brakes, you've got too much servo on them. Make a note, do this, change this, that, the other. Anyway, I won't go out again with the car. About 2 days later, we did all these changes, and we were under the time that we were supposed to lap, so it was brilliant. And they were all excited, and we led the race until the fuel tank split. So they agreed to pay the money if we won the race, so that was quite good. That's all right, a few dollars here. We went to Spa, we did a similar thing. I got Roger Enver involved with the team, and a guy called Julian Vernet, another Belgian driver, I can't remember his name now, because it's a long time ago. And we got there and we blew the engines up, so that was their fault, we paid again. When we got to Silverstone for the Tourist Trophy, which is a 2-hour race and then a split in another 2-hour race, I used to drive the first 2 hours, and then my teammate was called Katayama, who used to drive the second 2 hours. We got there again a week before, went to the track testing, and I came in the pits, and they were all looking a bit grim, and the interpreter said to me, "Clive," he said, "you're sandbagging." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "We're sandbagging. You should lap in whatever the computer tells us." And I said, "Well, I'm going as fast as I can. It's not good enough. Forwards have got to you. You're sandbagging. Jackie Stewart was driving the Escorts and John Fitzpatrick." And so I said, "I'm not." I said, I'm going to right, this track is undulating, but it's flat. We need to have softer springs fitted to the car. Well, anyway, they went in the huddle and they talked about it, and they came back, and I said, "Well, I know somebody in Redditch who can make you some springs." And at that time, John Moore, when we talked to you about his name, he drove Richard Grove's cars. John Moore was driving for Richard Groves, but he also was involved in locking brakes, and then he set up Alcon brakes. So I got John, and he said, I know just a firm would do it. We got these springs made up in the car, put them on the car. I took it out again on a test. I was under the time that they said the car would do, so it was absolutely over the moon. And I said, look, it's perfect, don't touch it. And in the evening, I got John Moore to come down with me to look at the car, and I said, look, these are the springs are really chuffed. The car was jacked up, no suspension on it whatsoever. So I actually went apeshit. And the Japanese were, oh, and then the owner said to me, he said, Clive, he said, we cannot use anything on the car in the race unless it's made in our factory. So we sent all these parts back to Japan by Sabina Airlines, and they'll be back in time for the race, built in our factory, which they did. And when we came to the race, I've got to remember, you can probably find it somewhere on records, but I was lying second or third behind Stuart Fitzy in the first section, and then it started to rain in the second section, and Kachiyama went off, crashed the car at Stoke Corner. So that was the end of that. But it just shows they were the first people to have an onboard computer, and that's back in 1968. So that was really interesting. And I like the little Mazda 5 car, the little sports car they built now. I said to Rachel, if I win the lottery, I'll buy one of those. Anyway, thanks for having me tonight. I've probably talked tonight about cars. I was talking last night about tow in and tow out actually on the E3000s, but I'm not giving any away unless they pay me.